All right. So obviously, even before the war started, there was a lot of anxiety in Europe over what was going on politically
Yes,
in
that's true.
Germany.
Yes.
And the first question I wanted to ask you was, how did this impact your life? How did you feel that this was affecting you in that time?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things that occurred to me. Then I was 18 when war was declared. The upshot was that the the Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain, uh, spoke to the nation, and at that time I was in staying with my uncle in a place called Ogmore in South Wales, West South Wales. He had recently bought a hotel in that 1938, I think it was, and I was staying with him for a few days. And he put the prime minister on around about 11 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing I remember was Church, Neville Chamberlain saying that he had warned Germany that there were all articles of war lined up against the coast of England, and stating that as far as he was concerned, this was tantamount to a declaration of war. So he had said that he had asked Hitler, he'd warned Hitler to remove such medical articles of war from the frontiers by 11 o'clock on the Sunday morning. That was the 9th of February. And he was introduced to the listening audience, and he said at that time that he had warned Hitler about this, that the articles of war had to be removed from the English coast, or it would be tantamount to declaring war. And he said, I heard him speaking this particular morning, that echoing in the tap room there, um, I have warned Herr Hitler, Mr. Hitler, to remove these articles of war, otherwise it would result in the gravest consequences. Remember, my speech is just ad lib, really. Um, and he said, consequently, he said, he has not removed any of these articles of war, and that consequently, this country is at war with Germany. Now that was quite a shock. I remember I was 18 at the time in this tap room in a hotel, and at the time there was a plane flew over London, and there was immediate panic about this particular friend. It was just a plane that a fellow who'd lost his way there. Anyway, uh, he said that he'd warned Hitler about the articles of war there being assembled. He said, I warned him to remove these articles by 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. He said the articles of war, tanks, guns, and all sorts of articles of war had not been removed. He said, so consequently, this country is at war with Germany, and he has been advised of this fact, and I've instructed our representative in England, in Germany, to ask for his passport and to return to England. Now, it wasn't so much a shock. It was a surprise to get that thing there. Consequently, the country's at war with Germany. It made me think of the two things where the interviewer was being asked, what did he feel like knowing the war was declared, and he said extremely unhappy. And the second point was that he was asked what he would do during the war, And he said mostly anything I was told to do. That was his net result. Um, then after that, it was a question of going back to Cardiff to my home and to see what was being developed there. I was 18 and
What did you think,
I
Daddy?
decided that I had to join up. So I went into the recruiting office, put my name and address down there, and was signed on to go to join the war, join into the war. I opted to go to the Royal Air Force in preference to any other branch of the other services, and we were marched off to the station, Red Railroad Station, given a shilling, which was supposed to buy us a meal of some sort, I suppose, and sent off to. I was sent off to a place called Uxbridge. There were several other people there at the same time were being inducted into the Air Force. I was sent because we were sent to this camp. We were given a meal there, told where the showers were, and sent into our main room, or main hut rather, to await further developments. The next thing I knew was there was a loud bang at the door, and somebody said, "Is there anybody from Cardiff here?" So I shouted, "Yes, I'm from Cardiff." And it turned out to be my cousin, who'd be called up at the same time. And I thought that was just extremely surprising. We had no idea each other were in the Air Force, or in the service, for that matter. And I always remember that I was going to take a shower, and I was stopped by a junior officer who roared at me, "Stand to attention when you're talking to a senior officer." At that time, I was only dressed in a towel, and I felt how ridiculous it was to be standing there stark naked and saluting to a crowd, and then an officer there. Anyway, we then settled down for the evening and awaited further developments, and we were informed where we'd be posted or sent to within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. My first posting was a town called Uxbridge in the southern part of England, and from there I was sent on to a further station called Warmwell in Dorset. I was sitting we was allocated in a tentage area, and I'd been sitting there. It was Sunday afternoon. I remember this quite clearly. Sunday afternoon, writing to my aunt there, saying that everything seemed very, very quiet. Nothing seemed to be happening, and there was just a roar of planes there, and bombs were being dropped all over the place, which didn't particularly make me feel very comfortable. From then on, we just waited to things that drill, the usual
Daddy,
sort of drill.
Daddy, was that the first bombs that you ever saw drop?
What?
Was that the first bombs you ever saw drop?
Oh yes, it was. Yes.
Was everybody terrified?
No, there were a few people. A few people were wounded, but this place, Warmwell, was right on the edge of the coast. So the German Air Force used to come swooping down from where they'd been bombing and drop a few bombs on the way over a few bombs on the coast there before they went off further up into further out in the country. It was a shock. Of course, the bombs were a tremendous shock to us. Never had experience of those before. And then the next news that came to me was I was being sent abroad to Egypt, which pleased me because I'd always wanted to go see Egypt from a viewpoint of geography and history, and that was where my Royal Air Force started to begin.
So one other question I want to ask you about and how you felt about is that France surrendered to Germany on June 17th, 1940, and that was an obvious shock to the entire world. I don't think many people expected Germany to have the kind of initial military successes that they did, and how quickly Germany was able to conquer France. And how did that, when that news reached you, how was that for you?
It was a shock, a considerable shock. Nobody in England suspected that he would have the audacity, for one thing, or the strength to conquer the countries that he did. France, Holland, Belgium, there were a whole string of them. But the thing was that eventually he attacked France, and that was the biggest blow of all. When he finally attacked France, caused no end of damage there. And we were England were expecting France to put up a resistance, a strong resistance. You can imagine our shock when France decided to submit and declared an armistice. That was a considerable shock to all of us. The only thing that arose out of that was what a columnist decided to write a headline. Very well, then we're going to be alone, and that gave us a certain measure of arrogance, if you like, arrogance. We felt that we would do it. We would beat Germany. There was no question about it. No question at all. Churchill hadn't been declared Prime Minister at that time. You must remember that. Chamberlain was suffering from illness, and he maintained his post as Prime Minister for some time until illness overtook him. Churchill was then sent for by the King and asked to form a government, which he did. This was not a popular move. Churchill had been very slipshod, had not had a regular post as a politician. He'd been gone from one extreme to the other, and the people at that time were not happy about this choice. The result was we sort of shrugged our shoulders and said, well, that's it. He's the Prime Minister now. We just have to obey him, which we did. Now, of course, but at this time now, France had fallen, and at around about this time, I was sent overseas to Egypt. Again, where I was pleased because I always wanted to see Egypt. I never thought I'd see it by the end of a war. But I landed in Egypt in 1941, the end of 1941, beginning of 1942. And our first result was there were two other people beside myself, Len Downton and Johnny Lacey, not Lacey, Withy. And there was some mess up in the postings somewhere or other, I forget, on the line. And the three of us were posted to Cairo, to stay in Cairo for some time. We were allocated to a hotel there, and were given three meals a day, the usual thing. And we thought we were really comfortable. It was a beautiful thing, being pumped in this hotel. No drill, nothing at all there. But it lasted 3 weeks. We had the time of our lives there, just the three of us. Well, they found out somehow or other that they had misposted us and brought us back down again to the canal zone, the Suez Canal zone. Our first real meeting, was with anyone in authority, was a fellow called Hart. He was a Cockney, but he was a station warrant officer, which made him next to Jesus. And his first instruction to us was, my name is Hart. They call me Happy Heart, but I'm not Happy Heart. I'm a bastard. And if you step in line out of line with me, you'll feel it. You'll get the suffering. Right? And that was we settled down. That was my then settling down to first life in the Air Force, in the Royal Air Force Zone.
So going from, obviously Wales in the UK to Egypt, that must have, been a massive cultural change. And well, I mean, you were still in the army, but I mean, it was a completely different environment. It was a completely different world almost. What was that like, trying to adapt to that kind of new environment?
It didn't affect me that much. You see, I remember I was 18 and a half. And I was naturally more interested in what was going on about me, my own particular personal circumstances, than anything else at the time. I settled down to it, and I began to realise what was happening in the world, and then from then on, Churchill dominated our lives, the service lives there.
Daddy, I remember you talking about how much you when you first felt the heat.
Oh yes, well, of course.
Coming from Cardiff.
No, that was just a normal sort of thing. It wasn't normal. I've been taken out of that Welsh atmosphere and put into the African one. The amount of the weather was a factor that really got me thinking seriously. Whereas we arrived in January, the end of January 42. And the first instance I had of the Egyptian weather was called a Khamsin. Khamsin is Arabic for 40, and the hot wind blows across the desert for 40 days. And that was the most astonishing experience I've ever had, because to feel the breath of air, the pushing of air, knowing it was wind, but it was a hot wind. It was really startling. But I'll never forget coming out of the tent in the morning, the first thing in the morning. But at 8:30, the temperature was something like 80 degrees, 85 degrees. And then it got gradually hotter and hotter until midday it was 89, 90. Sometimes brushed 100, but that was something else we got rid of. Got used to it, rather. And the other thing were the bed bugs. No matter what we did with the cleaning our beds, they were infested by bed bugs. And all you could do was we had what we called biscuits on the bed, which were 3 separate articles of sleeping. Take the biscuits outside, turn them over in the hot sun so they kill the bugs, and move them back into the tent, into the tented areas again. Which was really good, because the damn things crept right back in again, or gave birth again. Horrible things. Terrible smell when you kill them. Awful smell. And then we just settled down to a steady routine of Air Force duties, I suppose. But it was just a question there, settling in, and luckily I was attached to the signals section, and we had 8 to 10 fellows in the signal section. I was put in charge of them to allocate duties to them, for them, see they did their duties properly, and then the next instance of incident in our lives was the fact that we had about 100 or so WAF, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, stationed in Cairo. They were going to be transferred down to us. There are about 80 or 90 of them. And that created a mild sensation, to say the least of it. I don't know, there was just a general routine of service then. Luckily, there were no things like drill. We didn't have any drill. This unit I belonged to was a maintenance unit. It specialised in repairing planes that had been destroyed or bashed about in the Western Desert, brought back to the maintenance unit for repair. And they usually did very good jobs. There were mostly about 2,000 people, I think, on the unit. Quite a big one.
Daddy, in terms of the war, do you think, in retrospect, that you were getting the whole truth, or do you think you were all getting propaganda? Or?
No, there's no such thing as propaganda. We didn't think that. You just did your job day by day by day. That was all. It was only when you had an occasional bomb threat or things like that, which were very, very rare, very rare. Or things that the explosions or something, or somebody did something wrong or did something unusual in England or France or whatever it was, whatever it may be, that made us think about things. But the normal course of events, we had a cinema there, we had music, good beer. The beer was very good, Egyptian beer, which swore it was made by chemicals, with chemicals, but it's quite good. And I settled down into about, we had a gang of about 12 or 14 of us, where we kept together, going to our duties together, going to the canteens for meals, going for all sorts of routine things that came out of the service. But I settled down to. In fact, we all did settle down to. We were withdrawn from the Western Desert. We were far away from there. So we didn't have any immediate impact by the war as such. We had a daily newspaper, an Egyptian newspaper, which we read in English, of course, stating various things about the way the wars were going on in the rest of the world. So we got information there. We had a radio broadcaster. We had a fairly substantial amount of news items there. But for the most part, we just sort of settled down to a routine, a calm, quiet routine.
As you were saying that initially, the United Kingdom had a very sort of, this is all on us now. This is our war now. Sort of when the invasion of Britain for Hitler did not pan out the way he had hoped, and he sort of completely turned around and invaded the Soviet Union. And you were obviously sort of removed from that side of it, but what did you feel when you had heard that? Did that change anything for you, for how people felt that, there was now another side of the war, that Hitler was trying to conquer in another direction now?
The first reaction, of course, was that we thought he'd gone mad. He'd bitten off more than he could chew. The actual threat to England of invasion by Germany, we didn't count much about that. We didn't think that Hitler could do that. We just didn't think he was capable of doing it. We may have been foolish on our part, but we thought that once he'd beaten France, France had surrendered. We settled down to a steady war then with Churchill, and I think an atmosphere was, well, Churchill will take care, will give us the right instructions, will show us what to do, will tell us what to do. We relied on him for a lot of things. Um, he hadn't got a huge staff of generals around him at that time at the very beginning there. And in fact, for the first few months, he didn't do anything at all about invading England. That was his attitude was, it was caution. He was a bit afraid, I think, of tackling England head on. He kept on saying that he would definitely do it during the spring. When the spring came, there would be a change there. But he didn't do it. He didn't have the nerve to do it. I think we all realised that. Um, we had. I'm sure we had utmost faith in Churchill and what Churchill's advisors, the advice that he got from his from General Staff. Of course, since that day, since he we've read so many things about him. He was a real tyrant when it came to giving orders, and he was you see, you got to remember that Churchill was an aristocrat. He used to all his life to issuing orders, to seeing orders that they were dealt with. They were dealt with in a proper manner, and he took to it as to a magazine, to the manner born. Really, This is not to say he didn't explode. He did very occasionally, but there were usually explosions that lasted a few minutes, then they were gone. He never kept any grudges. Never kept any grudges. But I'm sure we felt that he was going to, he would see that we were taught properly, behaved properly, and used our tactics in a thorough manner.
Later on during the war, when it initially started that Germany had these startling successes, but obviously the Wehrmacht had begun to run out of steam particularly through bombing campaigns by the Allies, and particularly when after the United States had entered and more things were turning worse and worse for Germany. When you began to hear that things were reversing and the Allied invasion of France and that Germany was being pushed further and further back, when you were hearing about that, what was the sort of the feeling in where you were or among people you knew?
I'll tell you the one March feeling. When he'd been in the middle of Europe, he'd been sewing up country after country after country, and then he invaded Russia. And the first thought among all the English was, "What a bloody fool! He's really killing us at this time." We had no hesitation at all about thinking he really overstepped the mark. He just wasn't able to do it. He was a real maniac when it came to that. That was one of his first reactions. One of his first blows. Our first reaction was he was a damn fool. He'd really gone over the top now. He invaded Russia. We never thought he would do such a stupid thing, and it was stupid.
And finally, it was in 1945. I can't remember the exact date, but when you had heard that Hitler had finally committed suicide in his bunker, and while the war did not immediately end, the sort of the shadow of Hitler and the man behind the war kind of was dead. How did you react to that, and how did, again, people around you react to that? What was it like?
I think, well, I think the attitude there was, it was one of we expected it. We expected he would kill himself. I think it was a pretty fair attitude there to think that he had really, now he killed himself, and Germany was finished, but he was really at the stage where there was a final almost last minute thrust by Germany in the I can't remember the name of the I can't remember the name of the Jesus time now. But we didn't, we half expected it. We half expected it because with all the wealth of all the armament piling into England and the rest of the countries to defeat Germany. I mean, it was so apparent. He had nothing else to do. He could not. He just couldn't survive. He had to kill himself. There was no way out for him. But it came as a surprise, startled, but half expected. Half expected.
And this is sort of I guess in a way, unrelated directly to Britain's involvement in the war, but when you first heard about the use of atomic weaponry, on Japan, what was that like hearing that, they now had bombs that could destroy entire cities in one go?
Well, the reaction to the atomic bomb was it was startling because, I mean, nobody knew anything at all about it, not even the Americans themselves, until the bomb was finally dropped, and it was unpleasant. It was. I know that's an odd word to use, but it was a sense of maybe we'd stepped too far, maybe we'd gone too far. You see, I think generally, all in all, there were parts of the war where certain things, certain incidents took place, and while initially they would give you a shock or disturbance, they would sort of iron out in the end. But you felt all the time really that definitely we were on the right side. And that's a euphemism to use that phrase, on the right side. But we felt that he couldn't last at all. And when of course the atom bomb was dropped on Japan, that was an awful sort of incident. It was too much. It was too much of a thing. Somehow it jarred on many people. I think that they could have won the war without relying on such a terrible weapon. But there you are. That was the development of the outcome of the war.
When the war ended and you eventually went back to the UK, what was that like, trying to, I guess, settle back into normalcy, or whatever you want to call it?
I don't think there was there wasn't a great deal of feeling about it. It was, I think, in a sense, a sort of calmness. The thing is all over now, and now we can settle down to a quiet sort of routine again. It didn't happen entirely that way, but generally speaking, it was a calm sort of atmosphere. I just sort of Now we start again. Now we start again, sort of thing.
And finally, just if you had to kind of describe, how would you describe that? What do you most take away from how that time and that event impacted your life? What most shaped you, I guess, as a person, and how do you feel that? What did you most take away from that time of your life? It's a broad question, but
It's difficult to say, really, because you get all sorts of emotions, uh, ranging from A to Z, I suppose. There was a question of losing your youth, losing that youth. There's so much more to be done, so much more to be thought of. It was. I don't think we really thought very much about the attitudes of the results of what had been and what had happened, the war. But it was a sort of sinking back. Well, here we are now. Now we sort of get on with it, sort of thing.
and I guess if you do you have anything to close it with, really anything at all?
No, I don't think so. There were there were just certain odd incidents that popped up here and there. One of the things was shortage of beer.
Hmm.
That was a terrible shortage. And with all the bloody war that went on there, with bombs and God knows what, to come back home and then find there was no beer, that was a rude, that was a really cruel sort of sort of finish. I could see it was terrible because I remember we go from pub to pub to pub to pub, and trying to get into the pub. Sorry, no beer. And you have to file out again, or you managed to get no glasses, but you got hold of a couple of pairs of glasses. No, you already had some beer. You've got 2 glasses there. We don't. I hadn't had them filled yet. You're telling me lies. You've had beer. You've had beer. That was terrible. That one of the worst experiences of the war.
Well, I've I guess that about covers most of the questions I had, and thank you very much for talking with me and telling me
Okay.
your experiences.
Okay. A pleasure. And it's something to remember.